I'm going to go over the basics of hinging. So these are your hinges. They are pieces of Tyvek paper, which is the same material that untearable envelopes are made of. They're extremely tough and also flexible, and they have the property of wicking thin CA glue along themselves, and this helps them to be bonded to the wood in the airplane. So on your airplane, they are already glued into one side. They're glued into the rudder in this case, and we need to insert these into the fuselage and then glue them. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert this into the fuselage. The slots in the fuselage and the vertical stab are pre-cut, and we're going to slide this on, and we're going to make sure that the bottom of the rudder lines up straight. This is important for your tailwheel installation later, and we see that everything lines up. And then what we have to do is we have to set the hinge gap. The gap is the distance between the fuselage and the rudder, and we set that by swinging the rudder 45 degrees to where we're going to be able to, that's where we want to be able to swing it when it's fully assembled, to about 45 degrees. And so this gives us a little bit of gap, as you can see in the hinge line. So we push it up tight, move it to 45 degrees, and that sets our hinge gap automatically. Okay? So that works on any surface. If you want to be sure that your hinge gap is correct on any surface, push it up tight, flex it to the throw that you want to get out of the surface when the plane is assembled, and it'll give you the right gap. If the gap is extremely large, that may indicate you have a little bit of work to do on the hinge line, but since our rudder is pre-beveled, it's rounded in the front, as you can see, this gives clearance for it to swing. So when we put the rudder onto the fuse and the stab, and we line it up on the bottom like we said, and then we swing it 45 degrees, it gives us a nice little gap. We can just barely see through it, and that's what we want. Okay, so now we're ready to glue the rudder on, and we're going to use thin CA glue. It must be thin CA, and it needs to actually be new enough that it's still thin. If you get extremely old thin CA glue, it's been in the bottle a long time, it's not going to be very thin anymore. If you're not sure, buy a new bottle. Okay, we need the glue to be thin enough so that it wicks along the hinge. When we put it on the hinge, it needs to wick into the wood and form a bond, and only thin CA glue can do this, because we're not going to pull the rudder back off. We're going to leave it on, and we're going to apply the glue from the outside. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to apply 2 large drops of CA glue, thin CA glue, to each hinge, and we're going to let it run into the hinge and into the wood, and we're going to let it dry. And it'll take 5 minutes or so, and it'll be all dry. If we get any on the outside, we're going to take our debonder and our cloth, and we're going to clean it off. Okay? The rudder's hinged. Let it sit for a few minutes, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so our rudder hinges are dry. We'll give a good tug on the rudder, make sure it's strong, and the rudder still flexes 45 degrees either way, and in fact a little more. So this is ready to go. This is a good installation. If we have any drips of CA, we'll clean them off, but other than that, this is all done and ready to go.